treasurer, please call the roll.
President Eric Schultz.
Present.
Scott M. Harwood, Secretary Treasurer. I'm here. Edward J. Warner
Yes,
Jr.
I'm here.
William Pell IV.
Present.
And Walker.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a form.
Okay, very good. All right, first item on the agenda, we're going to put to the last, because that's mostly, internal stuff. I want to fool the public with that. Ed, you want to have a boat lift discussion?
Do you want to do that at
Okay,
the
we can
end
move that down so we can get everybody out of here.
That's okay?
Ann, Mary Ann, Eddie for Sag Harbor Water Quality.
You ready for us, Marina? Yes, Anna, Mary Ann Eddie, who has a PowerPoint, but unfortunately we aren't able to show it, so she'll just be reading and discussing.
So where do I sit here?
Sure.
Yes. All right, so, I'm here representing the Sag Harbor Water Quality Initiative. We've been around since late 2016. We've been working with Dr. Chris Gobler to look at the water quality in the waters, bays and coves of Sag Harbor. And this is now going into our 4th year. Every year I come and beg for money from the trustees, amongst many other. We probably have close to 20 different donors that chip in every year, the village being the largest, but not the only. And it's a combination of governmental entities as well as private individuals and organizations and companies, such as First Coastal. So let me see. Somehow my power, when I
This had to do with the identifying where the source of pollution was coming into the cove there, either from the sewer plant or from runoff?
Well, that was part of it.
Is that going to be determined last time?
So, yes, so the last time the results really showed that the water coming out of the Sag Harbor sewage treatment plant was really clear. The way they test for fecal contamination is they test for these, they're sort of like wingmen, if you will. You know, people go into a bar, they take a wingman, somebody that hangs around with them all the time, and those are easier to test for than the actual human fecal contamination. And we could find those fellow travelers, but the DNA from the human fecal contamination had all been broken. There was only cell debris that was coming out of the sewage treatment plant because it goes through a UV light treatment, and it just breaks up all the cellular matter that's from the human DNA. So we saw that. And where we were testing previous years, we'd been testing at the base of the outflow as the water came out of the sewage treatment plant, and we were testing down there, which was also right there by where a lot of boat slips are for the Sag, by the Sag Harbor Yacht Club. So it was a commingled sample. This year, and again this year, we are testing right inside the sewage treatment plant, that last inch before it jumps off the edge of the sewage treatment plant into the water, right as it exits the UV light. So we can pretty much, I think we can completely eliminate that. But some people, especially the Sag Harbor Yacht Club, they're going, oh, but we had so many fewer people this year, that being last year in 2020. That's not really a good example of what's going on. So we're testing again this year from inside the sewage treatment plant. And I haven't gotten any emergency calls saying, oh, we're seeing some bad results. And Gobler in the lab would always give us a heads up if we had bad results. So, all right, so I'm going to show you maybe what I can here. This is only 8 slides. Let's see. So there we go. This is comments from his presentation to us. And you know, sometimes I understand that you all are not interested in what's happening in East Hampton. But I think if you look at Long Island Sound, it's the westernmost part of the Sound that ends up being the most contaminated, because it's kind of upstream of everything that happens out east. And I would ask you to think about that in terms of East Hampton. Whatever's happening in East Hampton ends up kind of getting flushed into Southampton waters. And we did find that we had problems with Little Northwest Creek, which had never been sampled before, and of course the Havens Beach sump. So we're doing some more finer sampling there to find out if in fact it's from the dog park, which a lot of people want to point fingers at the dog park that's right next door to it, or if it's actually coming from stormwater that's dumping into that drain that's then going out to the water. So just like with the sewage treatment plant, we're capturing water samples as it comes out of the pipes from Bay Street before it hits that drain. So there's no way it could be contaminated by dogs in the dog park. So this concerns you probably more. This is the dissolved oxygen in the Ashore Marina, which is definitely in Southampton. It's part of the coves. And the line there is when people start getting really excited. And I'm sure that the trustees all know, not all the people here might know, is dissolved oxygen is how fish and the shellfish and the finfish support themselves. Just like we need air, ambient air, oxygen to support us, they need air in the water. And when the water has low dissolved oxygen is when you start getting fish kills and the turtle kill. Well, the turtle kills was something else, but you get fish kills. And it is probably related, no, not the only contributing factor to the scallop die-off that we've seen in our waters.
The scallop die-off is because of temperature.
Temperature, and that's also related to lower dissolved oxygen, and there was also a pathogen that they think might be related as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's about 3 or 4 different contributing factors that, it's like bang, bang, bang.
There's a parasite in their livers there, and they can usually tolerate it, but this is at the lower end of their range, so they
Right.
go into stress, and that's what
Right,
it
their
does.
stress, temperature, low DO, et cetera, the
But as the
pathogen.
temperature in the water rises, the dissolved oxygen is going to be less.
Exactly, exactly.
Right, so it doesn't necessarily correlate with, sewerage. Has to do with,
You
that's
know-
another factor too.
Sewage probably is the least, but what happens is when we have a lot of, there's 2 types of pollution. There's sewage, which is the pathogens, but it's also the nitrogen. And the nitrogen, of course, supports the algae, and the algae has a shelf life. What does it live? You probably know, Billy, like 12, 24, 14, 36 hours, not long. And then it dies, it sinks to the bottom, and the bacteria end up eating it using the dissolved oxygen. And so it's one huge multifaceted, problem.
Doesn't it coincide with the spawning of the scallops? Usually right afterwards, they're very weak because they basically used up like half or 3/4 of their body weight, and the water's warm, and then the parasite does take over and do injury to their livers and stuff like that.
I didn't know that, but that's,
Right.
there's a lot.
Yes.
Steve Teitelbach at Cornell
Teitelbach,
knows
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
about that, and, yeah.
No, they're investigating that right now at Stony Brook. They set up a lab to look
Oh, yeah.
at scallop pathology
Right.
and examine it, and with the hope of possibly crossbreeding it with some southern scallops that
Oh,
can
that are more resilient?
that tolerate the heat, and the parasite won't be as effective on them.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
The-
good.
The
good news.
scallops that we have here right now aren't the historic Peconic Bay scallops, because in '85, I would say 99% or maybe even more of the local scallops that year and the next year, subsequently, there was no set. So the scallops that the trustees had gotten, I believe, came from Steve Milanowski over in Fisher's Island and Mook Clam Farms up in Maine. So the scallops that we have here now aren't the historic bay scallops. They've actually been bred and grown and lived in colder waters.
Colder water.
And then we moved them south considerably, so with the warming of the water that we have around here, and
They're less resilient.
They're less resilient. Yes.
And the other thing, I sailed down at Havens Beach, and yesterday we saw an enormous amount of eelgrass that had washed up on the shore. And it went, east and west. It didn't go all the way into town to the breakwater, but there was a lot of eelgrass. And that's, of course, where the little babies hang out.
Yeah, but that's normal for the eelgrass to shed off.
Well, we
It's a-
talked to Steve Schott, who's like Mr. Eelgrass at Cornell, and he's sending somebody out this morning to try to see whether or not it could be due to anchorage. Whether or not, the anchors and the steel chains are actually like digging it up.
The boats that are anchored in the water that's 20 or 30 feet, there's no eelgrass. The eelgrass preliminarily lives between 6 and 10 feet. I've scalloped and fished down there my whole life, so I'm very familiar. But out of Shinnecock, you'll see literally rafts of eelgrass that are, bigger than this room, and it's a natural occurrence as the water warms up. Some of the, leaves and, they do shed off.
Okay.
And I've seen, 3 or 4 or even 10 miles out in the ocean where you get these giant rafts of eelgrass, and
Eelgrass,
you get,
they're just shedding?
you get, mahi-mahi and other fish underneath them. So it's a natural occurrence.
This seems to have like alerted people to something that's not usual and normal in terms of the amount. I mean, the water's probably hotter now than it's gonna be any other time of the year, middle of August.
Well, I think you have to factor in that we had a tremendous eelgrass die-off, and now you're seeing more traditional amounts of eelgrass coming up. It's
Well, I
not that
didn't-
it's that there's more, Cornell's been doing some work on reestablishing eelgrass beds.
Yeah.
Like in Mauritius Bay,
Yeah,
and Shinnecock is starting to come back pretty
Right.
heavy.
Yeah,
Now
you're gonna have
That's
more
great.
shed.
And now you're gonna have historic sheds coming up there. I mean, we used to have to send the crews down there once a week to clean off the ramps with
wouldn't that
3
be
feet
nice?
of 3 feet of eelgrass at this time of year
Yeah.
and into the fall.
Right.
There was
So-
a time that after the brown tide and the shading, there was a wasting disease also that basically covers up the stems of the eelgrass, and that would cause it to die also.
Okay, all right. Well, I think Cornell is gonna come out and look, and maybe we'll be able to see what this is, because it's different than what we've experienced in the past.
Okay.
And he does have a couple of eelgrass meadows pinpointed historically, like in the last couple of years, and he's gonna be diving out there this month to see where the status of those are. So, this is the rust tide that we had last year, and Ashore, which is in Southampton, definitely had a rust tide. And I did get one of those calls, that testing, this was in May, that we were experiencing a rust tide again. It's not the kind of thing that you can see if you're just looking at the water, but if you have an aerial shot, you can see the streaks. And there was a rust tide again this year. So this is what I want to tell you, because you go, oh, testing, testing, testing. You test until you're blue in the face, but what are you going to do about it, right? And I get that from some of the different donors that we have. So these were the recommendations from Gobler. Need to further efforts to reduce nitrogen load to the surface waters in both East Hampton and Southampton. One is extend sewer lines, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do about that. Upgrade on-site septic systems to low nitrogen systems. I'm going to tell you what we're doing about that, and I'm not going to go on forever, trust me. And examine our stormwater management practices, including snow removal. That's a problem. But one of the things along with stormwater is people's fertilizer habits. So we put this together with funding from the Sag Harbor Partnership. It's in Spanish and English. And the first part of it is this beautiful drawing from Gobler's lab talking about how this, the just stormwater, the normal water going into the fertilized areas ends up fertilizing the algae in the water. I'm going to give you a few of these. And I'm going to ask everybody here to take one and appreciate it and pass it on. So the other thing that Gobler noticed last year, when they did an aerial shot of that ditch that's in East Hampton and Havens Beach, they saw an aerial shot that appeared to show blue-green algae. So we are looking at Havens Beach for blue-green algae, but we're also expanding into Little Long Pond Greenbelt. And the other thing that we're doing is we're submitting for a plan to do an overarching plan for Havens Beach. It'll look at the topology and the hydrology of the whole watershed. And the only reason I'm telling you that is if we get funding for that, that will be a prototype of what we can do for the Southampton side of Sag Harbor. So these are the new testing locations, and maybe you'll be interested in this. This here, you can just barely see it. Oops. Is a major pump that pumps water out of low-lying areas on the Southampton side of Sag Harbor, and it spews it directly into the bay. You're shaking your head. You know about that. And this is exactly where it is. If you know, this is the bridge, so it's inside the bridge. There's the Beacon Restaurant, and here's a skinny little strip of green area between, what is it? It's West Water Street and Long Island Avenue. And these are the Gobler's guys crawling down inside that pumping station to sample the water there. So we're gonna try to see what it is exactly that we've been pumping out into the cove, what has contaminated that.
Well, who owns that?
Huh?
Who owns that pump?
Sag Harbor Village.
And there's no discharge of any waters into the town waters unless you have a permit for it?
Well, we must have a permit
Well,
for it,
Well, we'll be looking into that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
because we make people get permits for swimming pool discharges, for dewatering.
Yeah.
When they're putting.
This is going
swimming pools in.
24 hours.
Right.
All right, so they're down there, and we're gonna know what exactly is in there.
Can you give the exact address to Jessica? So she'll-
I don't have an address, but you can
Remember
see it,
we
if
wanted
you
to
wanna
pump
call me,
the
we can
Bolivar
go make a
Wash back,
little.
bring water back into the bay, and we made them infuse it back into the ground?
No, not Row Industry.
Row Industry, okay, yeah.
All right, so this is all this south of that is very low-lying areas. It's like drains even, you remember after Sandy, maybe you don't remember, but the whole area, the whole parking lot behind Main Street, it had about 3 feet of water in it. It's a low-lying area. So,
Well, if that's a parking lot,
and
that's
this
a
is
major
exactly
contributor.
where it enters into the cove.
Okay.
And this was, it's been dried, there wasn't much water coming out of it, that was low tide.
Is there a filtering system on that outfall pipe? So basically, all of this water that's accumulating upland could have pesticides, fecal coliform
Bird
from dogs,
droppings,
bird droppings,
You name
animals,
it.
you know,
You know,
petrochemical,
Oh,
asbestos
yeah.
from brakes.
I
All
thought
that good
Sag Harbor
stuff.
was more environmentally concerned than that.
Wow.
not DPW, I am.
Oh, I understand that.
Billy is.
Well,
There's some of us.
I think you'll see a major cleanup, because all we can go by is when your father and the highway superintendent got involved in a pilot project down in Fish Cove, which was closed for many, many years. They did a concerted effort with stopping all the road water runoff in that particular cove, and as a pilot project, and what was it open, like a year later?
Yeah.
It was certified for shellfish harvesting within a year.
Excellent.
So it's
Fantastic.
been done, so, you gotta stop it as a source.
Okay, let's be partners at this. This is a big deal. And I don't know, I could go on forever. I mean, even like what they do for snow, once every 5 years we get a major snow. What they do is they plow all the snow in the residential areas onto people's yards. That's fine. What they do in Main Street is they pile it all up into the center of the street so the cars can come and go. That's good. But then they put it in dump trucks, they take it over and they put it right at the head of the beach at Havens Beach.
Mhm.
And I'm having trouble getting traction on, we need a better spot, but I keep pushing that. Same kind of issue. So also, I started talking about the blue-green algae. There had been like, I don't know, it's the Association of Inland Lakes or something, it's citizen science. They did in 2018, they did some sampling in Long Pond and Little Long Pond, and they found what they labeled on the results just BG algae, and nobody paid much attention. And they haven't done it since. So we are testing that mostly because if you listen, probably didn't, but the East Hampton Town trustees had Gobler testing, and they tested Wainscott Pond, and they found very high levels of blue-green algae in Wainscott Pond. So I'm going, well, what's the difference between Wainscott Pond and our ponds? Long Pond, Little Long Pond, Lily Pond. So we're testing all those, and if we find blue-green algae, then we're going to be testing for microcystin, which is the toxin that some genera of blue-green algae give off. That's what led to dog deaths and human sickening. So that's, again, part of our work that's
Well, it
Southampton-based.
depends on how much residential outflow there is around each pond.
Yes,
The density,
exactly.
right?
And
So
there-
is there the same density in those two ponds?
The same density to Wainscott. There are houses that ring these ponds.
Maybe the town has done a lot of acquisition in that area, so is there less houses on Long Pond than there is on Wainscott?
I don't know. But enough so that the people, the Friends of Long Pond Greenbelt, they chipped in $750. I thought, and that's just people like, digging in their pockets, so I thought that was pretty good. So this, one of the things that people really think is the answer here is that we have to sewer. So we've gotten money from both Southampton and East Hampton, and we've put together an overarching master plan, and that's come up with 2 different priority areas, one in East Hampton and one in Southampton. And this is the one that's in Southampton town, and this is exactly where that pumping station is. So now we're back, we've gone through the CPF, and it's in front of the town board to actually get the money to put together a plan that could be put out to bid for design, build, and construction. It's not cheap, but it's probably the only answer that's going to solve this problem. But if you look at this little area there is
Yeah.
exactly where that pumping station is.
Maybe just explain where that is, so that in case people can't see the screen, the area that you're considering sewer. It's downtown Main Street, just a couple of the streets.
Well, Main Street is already
Sewered,
sewered, the
right.
commercial area.
So it's-
This again is by the Beacon Restaurant. If you know the Beacon Restaurant, if you go down Main Street, you hit Long Wharf and you take a sharp left and you go down, curl around, you'll see the Beacon Restaurant. And then, you know, a little further on, you'll see A Dock, B Dock, you'll see Barron's Cove over there. So that's all the north end of this area, but this is all residential. So this is, it's Bridge Street, it's Spring Street, it's Garden Street, and the northern top of it is Long Island Avenue. So that's the top priority area for us to expand our sewer system. Because that sewage treatment plant is running at about 60% capacity. So we have the additional capacity. So this is the area in Southampton we'd like to sewer. We have another area over near Rysam Street, near Bay Street, that's on the East Hampton side is our top priority.
Well, you know, the one thing that you're gonna have to factor into that also, if you're talking about sewer systems, is that right now, house sizes and house lots and zoning are predicated on the existing cesspools, right? When you put a sewer system in, then that component is taken out, and now you're going to, if you don't have zoning regulations in effect, you could have larger homes and multifamily, because that whole aspect is out now about the sewerage, okay? Which means you're gonna have increased density, increased water use, and water use on the system. And you know why I'm bringing this up is because some other villages have been trying to do that. And also from experience being on the planning board years ago, when we upzoned the town, we had in the master plan, the reason why we took thousands of lots out of the equation in the moraine was because we did a study on the ultimate population density of the town. And what I'm seeing right now is a concerted effort to dismantle that by putting in all this multifamily housing, regardless of whether it's, you know, good for, you know, workforce housing and everything. But
Right.
this town is sitting on a bowl of water, and we're already down into the 3rd aquifer. We got the top 2 polluted already. We're down into the glacial aquifer. And by putting in sewer systems, it allows villages to now change their zoning, because that sewerage component, if the health department rules and regulations and restrictions are off. So just to make sure that that's a component when you're pushing for this.
It's really,
Okay.
well, it's a timely comment because we are going through, if you follow Sag Harbor politics at all, this waterfront overlay district where they're really trying to control, and the previous mayor had one plan and then the new mayor's now has time to add to that. This is probably outside that district as it was conceived before, but I think that's really an important point, and I'll pass that on. I work closely with Aidan Korish, and he's a trustee, and he's the one who's been behind this sewer expansion. I cannot imagine there being multifamily housing that close to the water in Sag Harbor, but let's see.
Yeah, but you can't have it because the health department puts restrictions on, but once that's sewered, that, you know, that comes out. That's what happened in Southold. The Southold trustees stopped a major sewer line from going into Orient because they were worried about the increase in density there.
Okay, let me check.
Okay.
Okay, good point. So that's really all I wanted to say. It's like, and then I have this one, I said, so the cost of our program this year is $17,000, and we broke it up differently. So that's the basic sampling that goes from May through October. And then what we're doing is we're being charged $250 for every sample that we want to do the microbial source tracking on, which when we have fecal coliform bacteria, it allows us to find out whether or not it's human, whether or not it's dogs and small mammals, whether or not it's birds, or whether or not it's deer. So I think ultimately we need somewhere between about $23,000 and $25,000 in order to do the necessary microbial source tracking. And I have here your history. In 2018, you gave $5,000. In 19, you gave us $1,250. In 2020, you gave us $2,000. And I would be very appreciative if we could get $2,000 again this year. It's not simply a matter that we test, and we don't do anything to try to correct the problem.
Do you have a list of the sites that will be tested that we could?
Sure, it's in the
That'd be great.
proposal,
Okay.
and I will send it to you all.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
may have
yeah.
been sent to you before, but I'll definitely send it to you
Okay.
as soon as I get internet connection.
Okay. That'd be great. That would be helpful, and then we can discuss it.
Okay.
And,
Right, but the ones in Southampton are Ashore Marina. It's this place near, we're testing that pump,
Right.
and we're testing those ponds. Long Pond, Little Long Pond, and Lily Pond. Those are the ones that are in Southampton, or inside the bridge.
Right.
Right, which I understand is your focus. Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks for coming down.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Mill Pond Association. Would you like to, who's representing them? Get to just state your name for the
I
record.
have all my stuff, I guess I do. All right,
Steve
thank you.
Abramson from Watermill,
Thank you, Mary.
and Chair of the Mill Pond Association, but I shouldn't be the only one speaking here. Actually, Rachel Burnell is here, she is Chair of the Watermill CAC.
Okay.
We have,
Come on up. Move a chair for you.
we have 3 other residents here from Mill
James,
Pond.
could you move a chair?
All of us concerned about the status of Mill Pond.
You gotta
and
go
the
up front.
implementation of
Oh,
a remediation plan that was designed at some considerable expense by Princeton Hydro for remediation of Mill Pond in an orderly fashion. They determined that 94% of the biomass in Mill Pond is carp, and that carp are responsible for the majority of our problem, or the highest percentage, certainly, of the problem of nutrient loading within the pond that feeds algal blooms. And that's because in their reproduction cycle, they move around the bottom, which they technically call bumbling, and that disturbs all of the nutrients at the bottom and releases them to the water column, and then the algae have the opportunity to feed upon it. Mill Pond, as you know, has been historically listed by New York State as being an intense area for blue-green algal blooms, which are unhealthy. And we have a plan now for remediating the pond, and we just wanted to be sure that we're following through. We're concerned that there may have been some slippage in terms of timing, that some of which is out of your control. But we'd like to know where we stand with regard to that. Princeton Hydro, again, emphasizing that the number one thing that we should be doing this year was to remove carp. We've removed about 25% of the carp population in the Princeton Hydro effort previously, and we were looking to see another 25% at least being removed in addition this year. And the carp are not moving. They're certainly very fecund, as we know, and they will be reproducing, enjoying their spring activities right now. We were hoping at this point in time we would be able to be having a large population of them removed. Secondarily, we're also concerned about the implementation of the 5-year plan and where that stands, whether we have detailed that to everybody's satisfaction at the water quality improvement program, and therefore can look forward to hopefully a positive decision on their part to implement that 5-year plan. as it was suggested by Princeton Hydro that we didn't know to do. The first, again, just to repeat, the most important thing this year was to move on. There's also the issue of the floating islands. It's a small secondary issue because this was only a test area of usage, and we haven't had a report on the efficacy of that as to whether that was worthwhile or not. And I'm not sure that they have, I know they came loose this winter from their mooring spot, and to our knowledge, they have not been moved back to the place that Princeton Hydro identified as being the primary spot for their most effective usage. So hopefully you can tell us where we stand, and then we can move forward with this.
But the islands are still in the pond, and they're still, basically doing what they're supposed to be doing, wicking up the nutrients through the root system of the vegetation. Right?
Where are they?
I haven't been down there. We asked to have them reinstalled, I believe shortly after the ice. The last meeting that I was with you guys when you were on Zoom, correct, Dan? We were gonna have the Bay Constables go down there and reinstall them. That was the
Do you
last
know where they
conversation.
are?
We have drone footage of the location of the islands. Unfortunately, they were not moved because there was a harmful algal bloom, and the potential for health consequences for the people that would have had to move them was a prohibitive factor. So they are there. 2 are in Mill Pond Lane, and then the others are over on the western side of the pond. They have been identified, we know where they are, they will be moved as soon as we can, but due to the potential health consequences of any interaction with the islands, we will be updating that. The Community Preservation Fund application quotes have been received from 3 different organizations, and those are to be submitted. We have one that we're still waiting for, and those are to be submitted to the Water Quality Committee. From that, those are to be used as estimates, and from that, then a bid or RFP will be developed using those quotes so that we can move forward. As far as the removal of carp for this year, we were hopeful when we put together the quote for this year that we would be able to do some removal in the fall of 2021. We're still hopeful, but it's a big question mark at this point. Not only on the funding point of view, but in speaking with each of the organizations who submitted a quote, their one organization flat out refused to submit a quote because they're so busy. The other organizations are traveling, all of them at a fair distance, and they're all busy at this point, so we're not sure that there's going to be anything that's going to happen in the fall, at least from any of those organizations. And when my impression was that you had looked perhaps to other sources of funding to do a one-time removal perhaps for this fall. Did you have any success with that?
The supervisor was trying to make that happen, and I don't think that has happened.
We're hopeful that there will be some removal in the fall. If not, we'll have the funding secured so that in the spring we'll be able to do that. And as you so rightly pointed out, the carp are there, and the fact that there was a significant amount removed in spring and fall of 2020 and 2019 is helpful, and we hope we can build on that.
Well, one thing I'd like to add to that, Ann, is if the carp removal is going to be done in the fall or early winter, when the blue-green algae isn't prevalent, they can be sold to the markets for food. If they're removed this time of year, if they're basically put in a dumpster and used as landfill or lobster bait. So that was moving towards later in the season, you have another option where you can pay a contractor to go in there and remove them, and he can also sell them. So, I mean, it would maybe be an opportunity where a few more dollars could be made, and we might have a little more interest in the fishery.
Is those guys expressed interest in doing that this year?
I think he said that the best time for price-wise is the first 2 weeks in December.
Yeah. Well, the two guys that I know, the scavengers that specifically harvested for us years ago, when we took out quite a few thousand pounds, they weren't showing any interest because they were doing other things this time of year. But as the fall comes along and December comes along, it's an option for them. So maybe we can have a discussion with I know there's two people that do wholesaling other than the scavengers, so I will also put that out. One of them was a commercial fisherman, had a trawler, and he's back working on the inland bays again. So there might be an option to get one of those other gentlemen to do that.
Yeah, all three of our interests, because I spoke to them.
Yeah,
When I spoke to them this springtime, they said at Christmas time, they went the most money, like you said.
Yeah, I mean,
Are the trustees all in favor of an approach apart from the 5-year plan of getting carp out this year if the funding were to come through?
Or in this case, perhaps, if it were possible for the fishermen to sell the fish, perhaps there wouldn't have to be an outlay of funding?
well, they're historically, when we would pay them per day, because there were days that they would set up their gear, they would, go in there and they wouldn't catch anything. So, I mean, it's fishing. It's not an actual science. Like Princeton, actually, hydrological hired a company that actually had nets. They baited them, and it was more of a scientific approach. The approach that the local fishermen use would just go wholesaling and try to hopefully catch them when they're in an area in the pond that they're accessible for the nets.
Well, that begs the question as to why we wouldn't try to go with the most scientific approach to get the carp out. But apart from that, have we let the supervisor know that we trustees here are in favor of carp removal now, if you can get money? Have you let him know?
I would, personally, I would wait until the winter months, Christmas time, the fall, because there's a lot of people who could use those fish instead of putting them in the dumpster, Steve. And in my mind, where you could help the fishermen, the local fishermen out, making a dollar. They have been having a tough time the last 2 years selling fish during COVID. And if we can pay them some and let them go fishing at the same time, they actually catch more than the scientific guys will. Okay.
Well, I'm not
And-
so sure
and,
about that. Will they guarantee it?
You wouldn't guarantee how many clams Steve's gonna catch tomorrow, out clamming?
Well, the one outfit,
That's limited.
Scientific is limited too.
the one outfit that I had contacted on behalf of the project to make sure that we had a ballpark budget for this was WSB Engineering. The guys who are there for carp removal came over from Carp Solutions. Carp Solutions was the outfit that Princeton Hydro subcontracted to teach them how to use the box net. Not doing work, Princeton Hydro kept that for themselves. Their proposal from WSB was to send their own people in and to bring carp out. The supervisor, when I had a discussion with him with regard to carp removal, very wisely said, will they guarantee their results? And I said to him, when you go fish in Montauk and go tuna fishing, does anybody guarantee you a tuna? So, of course, the answer to that's clear. But when you have, he said, well, will they tie their performance to the poundage of fish coming out? And the answer was yes. They are willing to say that they will remove 6,000 pounds of carp for $50,000, and they will prorate their payment down according to how much they remove. That to me shows that their scientific method is proved and that they have total confidence as to what they're going to do, and that they will succeed at it. And that's what I highly recommend, and I hope you got a quote from them too. And you should certainly ask the others if they're willing to guarantee certain results also.
So,
These people will guarantee that they're going to get 6,000 pounds out for the cost.
to be clear, I don't think we're trying to say no to the scientific method. This is to try and patch things together so that before we get the funding, we can still move forward. I don't think this is, this is
And
something.
relative to the seasonal thing, there's a concern also that carp become far less active in the cold waters.
That's better for the town nets. They can go in the whole sand and get them, they're not moving around. They can find a way to live.
I think we're all in favor of that.
I
We're
mean,
all in
yeah,
favor of
I mean, my
comparable.
concern from the
Just the way
beginning,
it's done, that's all.
That's the way it's done, most efficient.
my concern from the beginning with this project is that I've seen this Mill Pond project have too many starts and stops and not enough follow-through.
Mhm.
There's been project after project that's been shut down, perhaps, prematurely at times before you could get the result. And when we all agreed to spend the money on the studies to do this project, my concern that I voiced, and I still have it, is that there will be follow-through from every aspect to be committed to it and the funding.
Mhm.
And, I tried to send you information, I know you and I have talked about this, where I believe there was some funding available to be successful with this. I tried to work through our liaison at the town board level to try and get this to go. Because what I really don't want to see for this area, and Mill Pond and this, this community, is another failed attempt or aborted mission, and have to start all over again. I think we got good momentum going. I think people should be committed to see this through. We spent a lot of money and there's been a lot of time committed, and we need to follow through. So that's what I want to see. I'm trying to advocate for you so that we all follow through. Obviously, the trustee's budget is severely limited. We're going hat in hand to the community preservation fund so that we can be successful for projects for this community. I believe you have our full support.
Mhm.
Do you know when we'll get an answer from WQIP?
Fall,
Not till the fall.
fall. Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It is. I mean, and the fallback could be the commercial fisherman. On our list, there's a fisherman who wants to put 9-pound nets, okay? If he can make money in Mill Creek catching carp, okay, at Christmas time, you have 5 or 6 guys who want to go in there,
Mhm.
to get permits to go and do it. We have to be able to allow people to go in there and do it. And they'll go with every Christmas time, like Old Man Lusky used to do. When I had the dock, he used to come down at Christmas time
Quality protection.
and unload 50 cartons of carp every other day.
Well, the important thing is we get them out.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you have any other thoughts?
So.
Anybody else here want to say anything or ask anything?
What's the marketability in Christmas?
You gotta go up here, Mr. Leonard.
I have to
Yes.
Well, wait, a member of the audience asked what the marketability
I can ask you a question.
of carp is.
No,
at
I'm not
Christmas.
gonna ask Steve, you guys are talking about removing carp around Christmas time. 95% of the carp in there.
Right, well, then you're gonna have to come up. I was just helping you out by
Thank you.
asking the question.
Come on up and sit down.
95% of the
Go
carp.
away.
You gotta
wait.
talk here for the record and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta be on record and you have to.
we gotta be official. It's a little difficult down here because we're not set up, but
Yeah, this is a conflict
Steve.
when we move the
Sorry,
meetings
can you
around.
come up here?
That's okay, I'm, part of the
still
bureaucracy.
moving around.
Yeah, 95% of the carp are 14 inches or less. There are no more big carp in there. The scavengers will tell you that. So, I don't know what the market is, Christmas time.
I never dealt in carp, so I can make a couple phone calls to the
Yeah, I
folk
speak to the
fish market.
scavengers also.
Yeah, well, they can make a
There's
couple
no
of
market.
contacts.
So then that's that. I mean, in theory, it would be nice to employ, local commercial
No
fishermen
question
to do the
about it,
job.
no
but
question.
There's no
But they
marketability.
caught the lion's share of the big carp.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many of them went to the dump.
Yeah,
Because of the
It was
blue-green
all
algae.
It's-
Yeah.
It boils down to follow through on the project.
right,
It boils down.
right.
No question.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the Water Quality Commission, the Princeton Hydro report, right?
As I
The
understand.
whole 5-year plan and
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah, so
And
that's
now,
a good
and now
thing.
they're balking at funding the carp removal? Are they in support of it or not?
I don't know at this point.
Well,
We are submitting, we're
The
submitting.
committee, the water quality improvement
The Water
committee,
Quality Improvement Committee?
well, have we heard that they are in support or not in support of
I don't know.
carp
What
removal?
are they doing?
We're submitting bids, quotes for carp removal. That will be their decision.
With your
to
sway,
fund.
you guys have a lot of sway with regard to whether or
We'll
not.
present when it's time to, and
Well,
ask
they-
for, we
Yeah, no,
want
that's
to do
what I'm
it.
saying. Your imprimatur will go a long way.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah, no, we'll support.
Yeah.
We're with you guys.
Yeah.
When
No,
Princeton
we're with
Hydro
you.
went in there to test the population with the electroshocking, is that something that could be done on a larger scale where we can go in there and have them do the electroshocking? Because my understanding is when you electroshock a fish, it just comes to the top and you can just literally scoop them out.
Right.
Is that something that maybe we could, an alternative avenue to catching these fish versus a box net or a gill net or a haul set?
That was part of the proposal from WSP. They included that they were going to be doing that. They were also going to be driving carp with underwater sound into an area where they could net them. So,
Regardless of the methodology of how it's done, I mean, if you're hiring a company and you're embarking on a plan of remediation to solve the issues of this area, you need to be committed to that and consistent so that you're successful. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
Right.
And that's the whole issue
The
here.
blip, though, this year was that, and I don't like to blame things on COVID, but due to COVID, the way things rolled out with the Water Quality Committee was that they didn't meet, when they dispensed funds was delayed, when the net was delayed, so that's really what's held us up. So I think we, and I speak for both sides of the table, are committed to follow through on this. I mean, when you look at the New York State DEC harmful algal blooms page, Mill Pond is right up there with Lake Agawam in terms of, perhaps not the toxicity, but it's right up there with practically with the number of weeks of blooms and the amount of blooms. They're widespread. You guys know, you live there.
No question, but
So-
through COVID, personally, I tried to be as productive as I possibly could, even when I suffered with COVID. I tried. So, look, we all do the best we can, and I think that's all we can do. But sincerely.
Mhm. Well, I think that we ought to be presenting that electroshock option also to them. And come out with a letter saying that we're in support of that and get this going.
I
Because should we start, it's the same just with the COVID, with the vaccinations, what's happening now, because it's not followed through, and it's not straightened out now, we got these other variants. So it's the same thing, you have to follow a plan, they commissioned a plan, they should be in favor of it, and let's get it done.
And do you know when the RFPs are gonna be put out? I think the sooner they're put out, the better, so that we know what we're dealing with.
We can't put them out until the funding is approved. So we got quotes that are rough quotes from several different organizations. Those will be submitted. Then hopefully that will be approved with
To
the
the
funding.
Water
and
Quality
then-
Review Committee.
Wait,
so-
Yes,
wait,
and then-
you're saying that it has to be approved by them in order for us to get the request for proposals?
Yes.
Have
That's what I
they
was-
gone on record of approving the concept of carp removal?
No, because they haven't met yet for that.
so this is a big red tape dilemma,
Right.
which
We
is why.
face that all over the place, I mean, even with like Mecox
Okay.
cut.
Right.
We've managed that cut, we've sent the same diagrams in to either the Army Corps of Engineers or the DEC for 50 years. The exact same dimensions and meets and bounds descriptions of it. And to get a renewal on the permit, 10-year permit, it's been 6 years. And they want us to come to a 10-foot wide cut when we've been doing it for 200-foot wide for 50 years. And it's just, endless. Every time you submit something, it's another question and another question, another question. Everything is completely, government is completely stagnated.
Look,
We're trying to, this board has always been very proactive and getting things done. Some things we've had to do without a permit, just had to do them, and,
Sometimes you have to do that.
yeah,
But
I know.
it seems
You know,
like it's
we like-
it's the funding source that's the stickler right now.
Which is why, on behalf of Mill Pond, rather than to see it go south after the town has invested so much money in it already and spent $50,000 on carpet removal before, to
Yes.
get 3,000 pounds, I went to the supervisor to see if we couldn't get separate money for this from the town. I think if you pushed him a little bit, it would be helpful, and perhaps we would get it. He would have to go to water quality improvement program and get a slice in advance. But if we don't do that, it's going to be because of red tape that we fail to get another 6,000 pounds or so out of Mill Pond this year when it was possible.
I'm all in support of this, because I think it's the right avenue to pursue. I've been here since Solar B, Foslock, and the whole process. I've seen one failure after another and after another. And when we're talking about the Foslock, that would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. For dollar, the carpet removal, hiring, Princeton Hydrological or whoever, one of their team members to go in there and to do the project, it's much cheaper than the other alternative, adding chemicals to the pond. So I think, I speak for myself, I'm in favor of it. I've been in favor of this the whole time, because it allows local baymen to make a living, and also, relieves a problem that's persisted, and we know it's specifically that it does, they uproot the sediment, and that causes, nitrification and phosphorus to be suspended in the water. So we all know this. We just need the town board and the supervisor to give some, a yes on some funding for this.
Did you speak to the supervisor personally, or did you speak to the town
Personally,
board?
yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we should draft a letter in support of this from our board,
I have no
and
problem
directly
with
give
that.
it to the town board.
The town just hired a bunch of litter control people this year out of the blue. They came up with the money for that, so just, and making more money than some of our part-time bay constables, to picking up litter. You have to realize too, that this board is in the way of progress that's going on in this town, about the beaches and all the rest. So your concept of us having a lot of clout with the town board is optimistic, because we are in the way.
Well,
We're trying to do the right thing.
We
here.
see,
Yeah.
we see you as a gatekeeper,
That's right.
and of great influence and purpose, and your influence matters. We need you to use it.
Well, we will, to the best of our ability.
We are the
you know.
owner of the pond.
Yeah.
So we want to see it remedied. We'll do the best we can, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you.
There's
Okay.
a lot of
So
stuff going on behind the
you guys want
scenes.
to write a letter to the town board to
Yep,
encourage
sure.
them?
We'll do that.
Sure, we'll get it out this week.
Yes,
That'd be
100%.
And however they go about catching them, that's.
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter whether it's
That's neither here nor
electrofishing,
there.
whether
Whether
it's,
market, no market, it's part of the project.
whether it's electrofishing, rope known, you have a bunch of different type of options.
Can't do road home.
But we already went down that line.
We went down that track. But
People would complain about that.
even though the Indians used that years ago to great effect, it disappears in 24, 48 hours, it's non-toxic after that period of time, and everything comes out.
I know.
In Lake Agawam, we did an application of a pesticide that it disappears in terms of its toxicity rather quickly, so that was okay. Rotenone would probably be just as simple to do anywhere you went to go use it.
Yeah, except it doesn't discriminate.
It's not
It
species
kills everything,
specific.
right, with the electrofishing, you can, the other fish will survive and they can.
While I'm in the
survive.
hot seat, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
At one point in time, I think you had black hair then. I asked a question about removing lily pads. And everybody was in favor of removal of the lily pads. But the DEC, in their infinite wisdom, said we couldn't do that. And yet now, DEC says they can remove lily pads in Lake Agawam. Now, is that precedent setting so that we can in fact encourage the removal of lily pads in the neighboring lake?
Well, that process that the DEC and we're in favor of in Agawam, you're not removing the rhizomes, you're just removing basically the leaves, and you're harvesting that part of the plant with all the nitrogen and all the,
Right.
nutrients in it, and it's being removed and put on land and brought to a landfill. So actually, you're basically cutting the tree down and taking all the bad stuff out and having the roots regrow.
Right.
A plan like that was never, we were never approached. We were approached basically to take the whole entire plant out, roots and leaves and all.
I mean, essentially, you're doing the same as a floating island.
I mean,
You
to
leave
answer
the
that
roots in
question,
there.
to answer your question, I
Yeah.
think the only way you're gonna find out is to make application and
Don't
use
try
that,
it.
use that as the rationale and see, is there similarities in the conditions and will this work, as you say, for the neighboring pond? And then we will, at that point, find out for sure whether it's a precedent setting or whether there's some other factor that made that decision. So I think that if you feel that we need to move in that direction, I think that's the best approach. Let's
Well, I'm not the
try.
science person, the science behind their study,
We
do.
We do.
they
But,
recommend removing the
Yeah, you can
rhizomes.
copy that permit.
We could
No,
make
not
that
removing
same.
it.
No, I'm suggesting that the science says that's the best way to go.
What? To get rid of?
Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of
but
the-
what you're
yeah.
having, right, but doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? If you're using floating islands under the assumption that the leaves are soaking up the nitrogen, wouldn't you want to just keep on cutting the top and you have a giant floating island for
Use
free?
it as a harvesting method to eliminate.
That's what the idea is, to cut the top, so when they die, they don't go to the bottom.
Yeah,
Get it out of the
I got
watershed.
that.
Right, you're reabsorbing
Yeah, I got
the
that.
nitrogen all the time by cutting it off the
Maybe we
top.
need to explore that as part of the plan.
because there was a science and there was a whole program in Agawam that we looked at, and that's what they are following.
Well,
They
is
actually
it
have harvested.
successful in Agawam, or we don't know yet?
Yeah, they harvested, we don't know if
They-
it's
We don't know yet.
thousands of pounds of this stuff out of there. So I guess every pound of it that you take out has nitrogen and phosphorus in it, so you take it out of the pond, it's completely removed.
Mhm.
If you just cut them off and they die and they go back into the system,
Okay.
it's re-injecting.
Understood.
So there is probably a whole entire plan on what you're speaking about for Agawam that you could probably take and mirror
We'll see if we can get
and
that.
put in
for
an
you.
application for, we'll look it up.
Same methodology.
So you could, use that in
Replicate
Mill Pond.
You just copy it over.
We'll
About
have to foil the DEC.
roughly how much
Next year,
of,
maybe we'll get some answers.
how much of Mill Pond
Doubt
is lily pads? 20%? Because I know there's a lot over in the southwest corner.
Elephant trunk as well.
Yes.
The old trunk by the island
Right.
never used to have lily pads, and now it's inundated.
Yes.
You can walk on it.
Yes.
I
But
can't,
is-
I weigh too much, but some lighter people could.
Well, it would make
But
sense to remove them.
in-
Yeah,
in the-
absolutely.
In the majority of the open area of the pond,
No, the open
There's
area of the
not-
pond, no, it's on the periphery.
yeah.
The elephant's trunk,
That'd be very easy to move, because you get the boat ramp where they can.
right, exactly, and that's town-owned property,
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
like
You know, I got
Crowley's
permission.
Landing or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
we'll find out.
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
That could be done relatively quickly, except the permit will probably take 10 years, right?
No.
We'll have to see if we need a permit. I mean,
Have red hair by
whose
then.
plants are they, anyway?
You
They're ours.
That's, you
right?
would think, you would
They're a
hope.
product of our bottom.
Right.
So maybe you could do a resolution now to get rid of it.
But we need the
We
funding
can't
to
do
be able
resolutions
to
at this
have,
meeting, but, we can
someone do it.
You do it so.
figure out what the options are. I have to talk to our esteemed council about, what we can actually do. But,
For our citizens.
it's a good idea.
And you have to take all the
Yeah.
garbage.
You got a weed whacker?
Actually, that machine's pretty, I watched them do it.
I have not seen it, but I've seen
It's like
it
a
on
weed eater with
video.
It's like a
a
floating
sickle
trash.
bar.
It goes on the side of a road
With
with custom, and
custom.
then there's a
Yeah.
red.
Plus in front of it was with like
It's
another.
done pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, I've seen it
A little
done.
close.
Yeah.
What it is.
Just have to land it.
That would be helpful, though. That would really help.
Yeah.
That would be like 100 floating islands.
Right, right.
If you had it
Absolutely.
there. doing its job.
Which
It
works
also-
great, because we had a big seminar over at Brookhaven Lab for, I think you guys were on, I don't know what year they were at. When the nuclear reactor had a crack in it there, and it was leaking radioactivity into the headwaters of the Peconic River, and so we had some of the nuclear scientists talking about Chernobyl and everything, all the different types of plants that remove nutrients from the water, and I found that sunflowers were great at taking out radiation. So what they're doing over there now in all those polluted ponds over there, they have floating islands of sunflowers, and they're harvesting them and burning them down and actually recycling the radioactive elements. And mustard seed works for lead and all the different plants that grow things.
Well, this would serve a dual purpose, because the flow of water that used to go out into Mecox is impaired dramatically by the root system and the lily pad islands.
Okay.
So if we remove them, it'll be helpful. Along those lines, you might want to say something about the acquisition of that property, which will also help with Mecox Bay.
What, along the railroad tracks?
It's along the railroad tracks, but along the highway. It is the Burden property, which is adjacent to what is now known as Settlers Field, a triangle that starts at Header Pond Road virtually, and the highway, and is going to contribute and make for an 8.5 acre area that's a park. And Mill Creek will be, there are 3 houses there that will be demolished.
Houses, right, I'll
And
familiar with that property.
they will no longer have any reason to be, they will not be polluting the waters there anymore.
So
I
do you
think
know
it's a
where,
process.
do you know where that stands? Because we were approached and we submitted, I believe, at least 2 letters of support.
Yes.
We spoke
Yeah, we're
to
thanking you. In
CPS.
essence,
Yeah.
you
But
you
did it-
obviously had an effect.
And
So
it's
that
not-
was
it's
acquired.
Almost, but that's,
Right, we got
let's
that
just not
process
jinx
started a while
it.
ago,
Let's
yeah.
not jinx it, I didn't say, but it, yeah.
But does it need more support?
We
I don't-
gave
No,
it
no,
very
I think
strong
it's just-
support.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
think
gave
it's
it-
just
I think it was a
the
no-brainer
signing
for
contract.
Right.
everybody in the community, and
I
and trustees.
think
and
it's a done deal right now.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, it'll make
Thank you for your work
an
on that.
amazing gateway to
Yes.
the east end of this town, because it will all be open. There's a big long fence there that runs for
We worked on it.
part of a mile.
We
That'll
worked on
be
it a couple
down
years
and
ago.
on.
Well, the town already was a triangle, so it,
Right.
you know, it'd be
The
an
road in
adjacent piece.
between would be converted into part of the park area. And there'd probably be a 1/3 of a mile walking track with maybe a wildflower field in the middle. It'd be quite beautiful, approaching the east end of the town.
We're talking about a
Okay.
kayak launch and paddleboard launch and.
People will be able to access Mecox
Yeah.
Bay right from there.
Yeah,
from
we have a
the
letter.
highway.
Right,
Yep.
we have a letter to write.
No, I think they said they're pretty
That's
much
already
down
done.
the line.
No, I'm talking about
Oh, well,
You're going back to the mill pond.
main
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
focus,
sure.
where we're
The
here,
lily pad.
to not lose sight of what
Right.
we're trying to do here, okay?
Support of
Get this
support of fishing and getting
Lily
information
pads.
from the DEC
Well,
about where they are with the lily pad.
Right, we're off on tangents, I want to make sure we get the main
No, I got it
objective
written
taken
down.
care of
I got
here.
it written down.
No, we got,
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
okay, well, thanks for
Okay,
coming
thanks
in.
for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good to see you.
Yeah, no water.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Be good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna go into general permit application for determination. First one is Scott, Sunset Avenue.
Yeah, I have Mr. First Coastal Billy Mack here to explain his application.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. My first meeting back in the presence.
Please, yeah, no problem,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's much better.
Yeah.
He's got it too.
Here's the site plan.
Okay.
It's a pretty straightforward, this is a tiny little property, well, tiny little bulkhead that juts out at 20
20, yes.
Sunset
Is this the
in
restaurant?
East Cork. It's the owner of the restaurant.
It's not.
No, I mean,
Sorry.
It's up near the headwaters, right?
but, yeah, and it's, this bulkhead's been there forever.
Mhm.
And somebody did some repairs to it, I don't know, 15 years ago. It seems to be in good shape.
And it coves in, right, coves in right before it gets to
Yeah, exactly.
outflow of the lake.
And He's been attempting to use it to moor his dock up against the bulkhead, but it's too shallow there. So we're presenting a 20-foot ramp with a 6x20 float for him to utilize and moor his boat more efficiently and safely.
Okay. The only question about it is the width of the,
The width's, I think, around like 260.
260 at that point?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
So you're
wide
fine.
there.
So
It's
you're
not
fine.
It totally meets Blue
Right,
Book
because that-
regulations.
Cool. Okay.
I don't know my point of view, James.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think 38 feet.
Yeah, overall.
I think it's like 90 feet that they're allowed for third.
It's tight, it drops off pretty quickly there, so exactly.
I just want to say one thing. I'm related to them, so I'm going to recuse myself on any conversation and put on this.
It'll be okay, Bill, because it meets Blue Book compliance, so
Was it
I don't see us.
Okay. Yeah.
They designed a project that
Yeah, and
meets
it's,
requirements.
and it's at the end of the creek, so there's not gonna be a lot of boat traffic past it. And traditionally, there's been pretty large boats up in there,
Right.
especially, right in that, I know we've approved some docks in that indent where Alcott's Pond releases out into under the Continental Highway.
Thank you very much.
So you-
Stick
are
around
you,
for the vote left.
You're ready to advance that to the regular meeting for approval?
Yeah, that could go, meets Blue Book.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Ed's next. Anthony Romano.
Anthony Lugano.
You want to come up? Speak to your project. State your name for the record.
Jacqueline Rogano. I'm here because I'm requesting to move a dock that's already legally permitted for over 40 years, I guess. We have a new neighbor who's been torturing us for about 4 years now. And the town verified to them that we were legal. They didn't do their due process before buying their house. They just decided they didn't like where the dock was once they were there. And the town validated that I was legal. Once that was settled, they took it upon themselves to file a personal lawsuit upon us for $500,000. And that's been going on for about a year and a half now. The costs have been ridiculous, and my husband and I just feel we should just maybe move the dock so we can have a little peace, because the properties are close to each other and they won't take no for an answer, basically. And I'm not in a position to even sell the house so that I could relocate and get away from these very difficult people, because we're in a lawsuit. So I have to fix it somehow, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to fix something that's not broken, basically.
Is every,
But it's a permitted dock
Oh, yeah, I
class.
understand.
The dock is somewhat on an angle to the north, going over the extended property line. But it does have a valid permit from us. I did meet with your husband and yourself several times down there, and I've been there a couple other times for your neighbors, each neighbor, looking at the properties. And it was my recommendation that if you move the dock, shifted the dock over to the south, put it basically in front of your two extended property lines, and going out to Smith's Creek, that it would be a viable dock, and you would no longer have issues with your neighbor on the north, and you would have no issues on the south, because you do have enough property in front of your house to have a dock there with
Straight
the
out.
extended property
What was the
lines.
reason why? Because of depth or something? Or just-
No, the dock has been there since the...
No, I mean, why it was put there on an angle like that?
I have no idea.
That
It
was
was
many, many years
probably
ago.
been there since
It's been the 50s or the 60s.
50s or 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, our permit goes
Yeah.
back to 70s, I think it
Yeah,
is.
something like that. This application actually brings it into compliance with the Blue
Yes.
Book. So even though it was
You don't have any
issued
objections to it,
permit
you wanna move it.
in the past, they're looking to
Nice spot for
bring it into
Need to be
compliance.
replaced
It
anyway.
does have adequate water depth. It does have adequate distance as far as being out into the canal and not
Right.
extended past the 1/3. It does have the property that will accommodate it. Right now, it has standard decking on it with a very well flourishing wetlands. So basically, the application reads the addition of a new catwalk dock 4 feet by 42 feet to be on an angle to the bulkhead, in addition a 3 by 10 foot ramp, and additionally a 6 by 20 foot floating dock. Has the depth soundings that mean low water, which requires 2.5 feet, which is what we need. I would like to recommend that no treated lumber, and also that we use a light penetrating decking, because that will allow the grasses to flourish on and around your dock and be a positive for the environment. So by moving it, you'll be getting rid of your issue with your neighbor, and you'll also be acquiring a better ecological, dock.
What do
Do
you
you have
think?
the plan, the quote? Do you have the actual plan? This is.
Will I get the details of the materials you want us to use?
Yes,
I'll get
it's
those.
right in the plan.
Sure.
Is that a double jet ski float?
It helps you anyway.
That's been removed. In the process of this, all the things we did wrong unbeknownst to us have been removed.
No.
We lost 40 feet of property because we had extended our wetlands. It's been years of expense and stress.
This doesn't have
And we
the...
really just want it to be
All right, yep, here we go. Here-
okay.
Got stuff right here.
Yes, here we
So,
go. Here-
to go off of Ed's request,
At this stage of our lives, they're similar age, like,
What's this here?
like this so big, and this is so small, but for them, it's
That's
Yeah,
the
no,
largest,
Just plans,
that's the largest scale.
larger scale of the plans.
Okay, okay.
Anthony already updated the new cover sheet with the fluid flow decking and the materials to be untreated, so we're all set
Oh,
on that.
I didn't want to.
Yeah, he was
He
looking at
told
the
me
wrong
about it, I
application.
wasn't sure if it was the same materials, but he's already spoken to a dock builder, and he is familiar with the material, and we're just waiting for the approval to get it on the
And
calendar.
what is the next door neighbor on the other side say? Is it?
There's no dock there?
He has
No, I know, but-
he has a dock that he moved. He built it, this neighbor has not ever had a dock, and I believe will never have a dock.
Still within,
They wouldn't be able to at this point.
Is adequate?
This,
Room.
he added, this is the neighbor I'm having trouble
Just take
with.
this
He
and go like
added
this.
this, through all
This
this,
is what he wants.
and,
With
Yeah.
a permit?
I don't know. You know, I'm not the type to say
Yeah.
what's going on
Where
over
Does
there,
that-
but,
Does that other dock is permitted? Did you do it permit on that
I'm
dock?
not gonna get...
Yeah, I'm
there-
not-
There is a lawsuit
Okay.
going, because I don't think I'm gonna get into that.
I don't know,
We're
and
reviewing
we didn't come
specific-
here to say
you know,
that.
I
you know.
understand.
Specifically reviewing
It's
this
just a
property.
plan.
It's a good question.
No, there's already, the Bay Constable has been down there, Billy.
Okay.
I've had them look into this, so it's a process.
It's been ongoing.
Yeah, okay,
I think we're trying to legalize and make
okay.
one property, good, and then when the other applicant comes in, we'll do the review over that.
Exactly.
Okay, James?
Now, the other neighbor who's never had a dock, I haven't really discussed it with anybody. This should not be an issue for her. I'm safe
You're
on
gonna-
both
you're gonna
sides.
Well, you're
10 feet off, you're
Okay.
you're within the trustees' regulations.
Yes,
Okay.
and the Army Corps regulations.
well, you're legal now.
Our regulations, yeah.
I know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
now we're moving towards them and.
Yeah, you'll have a
Who
legalized
knows?
dock that conforms to our rules and regulations
Wonderful.
with no issues with your
Better
neighbors.
quality of
appreciate
life.
Yes.
Let's hope,
That's
let's
what-
hope, let's
that's what
hope.
the goal is, right?
People tick in different ways. But I
All right.
appreciate and respect all your time and thank you.
So I'd like to
Thank you.
advance this.
So I
Okay.
guess I'm in the mail.
We're going to, this goes on to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks, and then it'll be ready to be approved.
Okay, do I come to that as well?
You don't have
You
to.
don't have to.
It's
At that
welcome,
stage?
Jim.
at this
Yeah, I
one, we'll-
enjoy this. I
Okay.
enjoyed everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
thank you
Have a nice
for
afternoon.
everything. Have a great day.
Ed's got the next one,
Okay,
far bid.
I appreciate it.
The mayor closed San Francisco. Gina Rigdon is the consultant, and it says bank owned, Wells Creek. They're asking to put a 4x22 fixed with through flow grate, open grade decking, a 3x20 ramp with made out of aluminum with handrails to bolt a kayak on a kayak rack on the fixed dock to install a 6x20 float secured by 2 pilings, probably 10-inch pilings, I'm correct?
It's gotta meet the blue book.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I would, or 6x6. So,
And then an additional.
and 2 additional tie-up pilings, so.
Bank going, spending some money, huh?
Yes, this is the property. We have a lot of frontage on Wells's Creek. They do conform to the 1/3 parameters as far as the width of the creek canal.
What is the distance that these, what's the distance these tie-off piles are from the floating dock?
So,
That's pretty far.
Doesn't have any specific.
yeah, that's,
Well,
looks
what's
like
that
about,
dimension?
well, if the float is 6, it looks like double, like 12,
Yeah, which would be standard for.
Well, just.
about 12 foot.
Is it 12? Just wanna make
Well,
sure.
this
Yeah, I
this
see what
is
you're saying.
6, about 12.
What creek is this on it?
Wells Creek.
Wells Creek.
Wells Creek.
It would be consistent to all the other docks in there.
12, 13.
So you're looking to tie it fairly large. I mean, they're.
They must be looking to tie a pretty large boat if they need a tie-off house.
Well, I mean, on a south or southwest wind, it gets pretty rough in it too. It blows right down.
Well, you have 4 foot, 4.5 feet of depth at the end of the thing, so you can accommodate a large boat in there.
Yes. It's one of the few creeks over there that does have very deep water.
They should
Come
show
in.
dimensions though from, right?
Let's scale it out.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, what do you
I don't have one.
Should list it down.
Right, well, have them,
Looks good.
have them put a scale on there, and
Yeah.
then move it to the next meeting, and then if there's any questions on it, we can have a question on it, so.
Tie-off
To the
piles.
next work session?
Yeah.
No, so you're moving it forward, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Move
moving
it
forward, just tell them we
So
need, we
just
need
put
a.
the
Tie-off-
dimensions
I
on
want
the
the
distance.
tie-off pilings scaled and the size of the pilings.
Yes.
Right,
And
and
then
just
the
we know, we
building
need to know that, the tie-off piles they use have to conform to the blue book
I
regulations.
just know Regina's off, I think she's out of the country till the 27th.
You could
All right,
scale it.
so it's-
You could
it's-
scale it, I mean,
it's a-
we just need to, we could do it right now, if you had a scale up,
Right,
no big
it's a-
deal.
It's a bank-owned property, right?
Yes.
So,
We
I
might-
mean,
We might be better off having them scale it.
yeah, well, it's a bank-owned property,
Yes.
right? So,
Yeah.
No,
pretty much
licensed
there, why don't you
surveyor.
wait and let them
You know what?
clearly detail, that way we
Reggie?
don't have an issue.
Yeah, this is.
It's not an
fine.
urgency.
We're gonna
Okay.
hold this until Gina gets back, and
Yeah.
then we can have a conversation with
Okay.
her specific to this.
She has a couple days, because I think our next meeting is Wednesday,
Yeah.
the 30th, maybe, is that right? Sure.
September 1st.
September 1st, so
Because
she would have a couple days.
Yeah, it's the
thanks.
Labor Day was moved to a Wednesday.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right, do that then.
Yes.
It's a minor issue,
And I think we want to have light penetrating decking going off the bulkhead too. So,
It's a bank-owned property, let's make sure that all the numbers and everything is correct.
that was
No
that,
sense in
and
rushing.
we'll also get through flow decking on the catwalk.
but, okay. All right, so,
I'll hold it until.
good.
Okay.
Okay, Bill.
I have Stephanie Medic, 2 lands in Tuckahoe. I got a letter from the consultant that wants to hold it over because they're gonna resubmit update plans for the float.
Okay.
Good. Good.
So
Hold it
we'll
over.
have to discuss it.
Okay,
So,
all right, very good. Then we go into fish trap pike applications for determination. Okay, yeah, come on up.
I'm Joseph Adams.
So Ed, did you have any comments on these?
I basically submitted them to Richie. Basically, the only one that I had that question with is the one that's not on here, because I believe it's a duplicate of Jamie Krause's application. The other ones, they pretty much were where historically either fights or traps have been set, Tiana and, Western Shinnecock. and also Quonic and Moneybog. So the only one that I had a question on was Moneybog because it's extremely shallow there, and it's, but it's nowhere near a navigable channel. All of the proposed traps and fikes are within the trap area, which is the on the navigable charts. So they're all pretty much, good to go.
Whose were they before, do you know?
I believe Dougie James, Rodney Overton's, and some, the one in Quonic is a new one that I've never seen apply for. I mean, the one in the money book, sorry.
Okay, so, some of the members expressed some concern about horseshoe crab areas. Are you intending to trap horseshoe crabs?
Not intending, but if it's an open season, it is a sellable item. But there's also regulations, so
State regulated fishery?
Yes.
so horseshoe crabs, yes.
Yes, so you still have to comply with landing
Yes.
quotas.
But the trap does, it's selective,
Right.
anything that's not to be kept is released.
It's gonna catch a lot of horseshoe crabs.
So how do you work around that though? Because there's certain times in June, May and June, and
The,
perhaps
the
July.
traps
when-
won't be in the spring.
Oh, okay,
They're gonna be only fish in the fall.
okay.
Oh,
So
in the
that's
fall.
spawning season then? So that's a,
Springtime.
yeah,
Springtime.
that's a more
Could
concerning
we
season.
put that in the cover, that cannot be used in springtime?
Yeah,
Some
you
of
could-
these
That's,
traps.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
you could permit them for a certain period of time when they can go in and when they
They
have to
do
be
have a
out.
season in
Yeah.
the fall and they do have a season in the spring.
Yeah, so, the one, ones where,
What, horseshoe crab?
We're talking the pots?
No, the traps.
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 The majority of the traps that you have proposed here, there's very few horseshoe crabs that are gonna be crawling. The majority of the horseshoe crabs are on the south side of the bay where they come in from the ocean.
The one up in, off the island, there's probably some up there. So, There's sand up in there,
Where's that, Billy?
The third one?
yeah.
But it's really not your intent,
Moneyball?
right?
No, I'm not intending to catch horseshoe crabs.
So if you did have to amend, probably.
But I mean, he's allowed a certain
Right.
quota of
Yeah.
them, so.
Yes,
which
he's
is-
gonna get it.
If the limit is 200, I'm going to take my 200.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
It's just like the fluke quota and the, the weak fish quota and, any other quotas that are set on the fisheries. You have to abide by the quotas. So, I mean, these traps are, gonna be set in a way that, will catch multiple species different times of the year, so. I mean, that's what they have been.
Fast you get your 200, you're done.
And is there one more that's to go on here?
No, there was one that was a duplicate of an
Just do it,
application.
just take
It
it
was
off.
363, right?
Yeah,
It was the
that's
first one, the one that ended up withdrawing.
yes.
Is the
Okay,
Jamie
so-
Krause's trap, which is in western Shinnecock Bay, there's already a permit that was issued.
How long are we gonna issue this for?
What's that?
How long are we gonna issue this for?
I mean, it's a yearly permit. I mean, it's a standard every year. You have to reapply for your trap sites.
Okay.
I mean, I've done it my whole life.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you apply for them and out of the 9 here, you might find only one of them is good and then he's gonna have to try alternatives. You never fish in
That's
our local
exactly why
waters,
I
so.
went for 9.
If it
Right,
was,
you can see what works, what
if it was,
doesn't work.
Mr. Overton's,
Lot of
there must have been a
effort.
reason why he,
Yes, and Gene Hubbard, there's another, a lot of these have, a lot of history,
right.
but they haven't been fished for many years because the people are no longer with us, so.
Right.
We wish you luck.
All right,
Be safe,
okay,
Let's go into some cop.
okay.
Yeah,
I was
I'm still
listening
gonna
to that. I was
sort out that other
interested.
situation that we have with that other project that's kind of conflicting with some of the commercial stuff.
Well, maybe you'd want to think about putting a pound trap in Milk Pond and see if you can catch some carp.
But
That'd be,
maybe not on the agenda.
that'd be an interesting concept.
So are we advancing all of those?
Yeah, I'm okay with
I'm okay with it.
We still gotta,
it. Afternoon, right?
Yes.
we still gotta figure out what we're doing with that other project that's kind of conflicting, I think, with some of these other traps that are out in
Right,
that area.
Right. We can discuss, we're gonna discuss that in the executive session.
Okay.
Okay. All right, with that, we have a lot of things to discuss in the executive session.
I have a boat lift.
Oh, right, okay.
There was an application that was submitted to us for a boat lift in Shinnecock Bay, by Commerce Point. since subsequently has been withdrawn, but there are 2 boat lifts there. There are a couple more boat lifts on the north side of Shinnecock, and there are several more around my area in Tiana and western Shinnecock. Going through the Blue Book, these boat lifts are not permitted only in Murch's Bay.
Right.
I'd like to see them to be allowed, being that there's already boat lifts, Cold Springs, West Neck, many of these other areas that we do not permit them. I'd like to be able to have them reviewed and look and see if there's something that we can allow them to be placed. The new boat lifts are much different than the ones that were here 20 years ago. At that time, the boats were lifted up very high, usually 6 or 8 feet out of the water, and were suspended well above
Right.
where they would be at a dock. I'd like to work on a plan, if the board would be acceptable, to, change the water depth to 2.5 feet, similar to like we have in our docks, and specifically come up with a boat lift that you would allow no higher than a dock that would be naturally moored at. If it's something that's favorable for the board for me to move forward on, and I'll sit with James and come up with a plan and submit it to the board for their review to maybe have a public hearing to allow boat lifts in a larger part of the town. One good thing about boat lifts, most times that people use them, they do not paint bottoms of the boats, no anti-fouling paint, and it reduces the amount of chemicals that are in the environment, nickel and copper
Copper, right.
specifically, which are toxic to many of the shellfish.
Mhm.
So if it's something that, you see favorable for me to work forward to put together a package for everybody to review and work towards a public hearing, I will do that.
Good idea. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
a couple questions. Would you also include the floating solar boat lifts
Yes.
in these proposals?
We actually had permitted one in Red Creek Pond. It was a solar boat lift that was lifted up by a solar battery, and it used vegetable oil for the hydraulics. So if it ever leaked in the water, it would not do any damage to the environment. But that's another area that we do not allow boat lifts. So I would come up with a whole list of criterias that would need to be acquired that for the applicant to be able to, get a boat lift in the area.
So that was the reason why it was prohibited in the other areas, because of the visual aspect of it.
Correct.
The reason why it was left in Remsenburg was because of the water depth and
Yes.
Rough seas.
the density.
And I would also add, once we get to the public hearing part of it, I'd like to get some input from the local consultants who have been, asking for boat lifts
Mhm.
throughout the town so that we could work out a good, management plan for this boat lift throughout the town.
Mhm.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it in the first place without allowing different parts of it.
Yeah,
I thought it was good, especially because of the anti-fouling.
exactly. And it minimizes the damage to docks. They break apart when storms come and the boat is
Right.
moored to it.
Yeah,
When it's on a lift, there's no
it's a
damage.
safe haven.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
copper plays havoc with
yeah.
larval shellfish.
So, yeah, I think we've had a couple public hearings in very specific areas. They were very contentious, so I'd like to take it on a bigger level and look at the whole entire town.
Townwide.
Speaking of copper, just another added aside there, the state of California decided to ban certain types of brake materials there, and they wanted more copper in their car brakes. And they found this one particular area was devastated with shellfish growth. And they found out that it was, every time,
Due to the brakes.
the brakes on the car, it washes down into the creek there, and they found
The sewers.
To run off?
the runoff was creating a problem with the shellfish growth.
Interesting.
So, if you have 1,000 boats or 500 boats in the town with no copper bottom paint on it, I think it should add a.
What would you make that a, requirement? Because there's a lot of people, right?
Well, that's what we're gonna have a.
Yeah, if they have a boat lift, they should have no.
I'm gonna work
bottom
on
paint
a
it.
good plan to present to everybody. And any thoughts you guys have, I'd love to incorporate them in it. All right?
Yeah, we started with the, preservatives and the copper and the CCA, so
Right.
this is the next step.
All right.
Step
Okay.
forward.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, Bill?
No, I'm just in favor of that. We get a lot of requests for boat lifts, and you just go through the blue book, and it's too restrictive.
Right,
Yes.
okay,
Thank you guys for bringing that. Thanks, Ed.
All right.
Thanks, Eddie.
okay. And then you had the permit integration,
Do you want to talk about it first, or
What's that?
the permit integration for the GIS permits,
the readers.
the scanning project?
Well, I mean, we'll let you talk about it because you've been handling it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So, over the last few years, we've all been working on getting all the general permits scanned in from the conference room, which will help with FOIL requests and, you know, the Bay Constable's looking at permits, all of us in the office looking at permits. Hopefully the goal is to get it like integrated into GIS, that's the long-term goal. When we had all the permits scanned in, I just want to show you guys really quick, it's scanned into this program called Vasion, which literally just has the permit number, because that's how it was indexed when we had it scanned in. So now we need to go into that was like phase 1 was scanning. Phase 2 is indexing, and then phase 3 would be linking those indexed permits to GIS. I think this is going to be at least a couple years, maybe 5 years, just based on how many permits we have. That's just a guess, but I think it's gonna take a while, and me and Ed had discussed possibly applying for another grant to get someone to index these, because it's gonna take a lot of research for someone, you know, properties are subdivided, they're merged. These permits go back to, I don't know, like the 20s, 30s,
Well,
you guys know them better than I
This is gonna be another
do.
discussion for executive session as far as
Okay.
permit, you know, expiration dates and things like that. So-
Okay, okay,
So that might change things.
okay.
But what is it going to take right now? Say you get a permit, we approve a permit
Mhm.
next month. Is there a mechanism in place in the town that puts it on the GIS right now?
Yes, so as of, I want to say, James,
2016.
2016,
Yeah.
Oh, 2016.
we started entering them into
Okay.
govern. So
Okay.
back to
So this is just going
2016 to
backwards.
current, yeah,
Yeah.
we're all good, everything's in GIS and govern, and that's great.
Okay.
People that subscribe to the e-portal, you know, realtors and agents and consultants, they're able to see those permits, but prior to 2016, no one can see anything. We're doing a lot of FOIL requests right now, we're inundated. So this would really, really help
Right.
alleviate.
Is there a grant opportunity available? Well, we gotta research
That's what
it.
we need to talk about.
Well, let's research it, because
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we
what I wanted
certainly
to
should do
discuss
that.
with you.
Let's
Right,
do it, let's
right.
see if there's something available.
Okay.
Because we've done it in the past, so.
It's essentially what the building department did in the 90s, I believe. They
Yeah.
got a grant to get all the COs and building permits
Right.
back
Right.
before 86 or something like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Indexed into govern, so that they have that. So
Yeah.
essentially, it's just going to be added to the same database that
Right.
we have
Right.
already set. That way they can just go right on, agents can go right on to it, look it up, and
It's a good
see
idea.
it in the
Yeah,
same
that'll help with
area
the
as all
FOILs,
the other
yeah.
permits.
Definitely would help with the
I
flows.
believe we spoke with, me and James spoke with Ross about it, and him and Paula had a discussion. And Ross basically said that they had gotten a grant, like James said, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they'd hired 3 people full-time for 3 years. And that was able to get done for the building permit stuff. I think our stuff, I would imagine that we don't have quite as much as the building department does, so
Right.
A lot of stuff,
just to
But
give
a
you
lot,
an
but some of it was
idea.
started already
Old stuff.
by,
a lot of old stuff.
it wasn't scanned, but the individual permits were gone through when new permits came in, and the tax map numbers were added to, were written in on the top of the permits, so
Mhm.
that should help a little bit.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. So we just
Let's
gotta
try it,
take
okay.
it
Let's try it, Jess.
to the next step.
No, I think
Guys.
we cut
No,
down on
that's-
the amount of work in our office, and I believe Lisa Kay is going to look into the availability of grants.
Good.
Okay.
Yes, we can
Great.
talk to Jennifer Messiano High, and she's like the grant writer for the whole town. So she's one that helped us with the scanning portion of the grant, so we'll move on with her to explore other
Basically,
grants.
phase 2 of the project.
Great, thank you, everyone.
No, you
Just, okay, doing that.
Charles?
I do have one other topic of discussion. I've gotten,
I think we ought to talk about that in executive session.
okay, we'll talk about that in executive session.
Yeah, we got a lot of things to discuss in executive.
Thanks,
session.
guys.
Okay,
Right,
everybody,
right.
we'll do that.
Anybody else have anything before the board? Any other questions or anything?
Go to the exec.
No. All right, I make a motion that we go into executive session for litigation and personnel matters.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's okay.